Hey entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers. We started the Pilot House email and customer retention team to crush targets. And in our 4th year, we are the best customer retention team in the Roman character set. We use campaigns to fire up the addresses you spent so much money to acquire and build effective automations that keep your engagement window fat and drive value that you can amortize over years. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have, and the most effective ad funnels go to high-intent audience. Come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak with me directly. I'll give you a free audit. Back to the show.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
We're going to talk about digital ecosystems. We talk about the funnel all the time in marketing. I represent it to people as a circle. I want us to think about, on the left track of this circle, visits. Paid advertising is expensive. You want people hitting the site and buying. It's about traffic and making sure that the traffic going down is the most qualified and they're going to spend right now. On the right, on this organic side, think about views. You need to show a lot of people your brand for it to spill over, for you to have growing organic traffic and growing brand awareness. It's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilot House email and customer retention team. If you want to make the sweet nectar of low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem, follow us on your favorite podcast app today. This time, we're going to talk about digital ecosystems. We talk about the ecosystem often, and it's like, you got ads, and you got maybe some retargeting, you got emails flying around, all the different parts of your digital marketing system, right? But in fact, there are sub-ecosystems, essentially, right? And they are focused around strategic goals, okay? And these ecosystems have to be measured together and as themselves. For instance, the persistent revenue ecosystem, which we will focus a lot on today, because that's where email and retention really fits in. You have to have impressions, clicks, revenue, and cost for that whole ecosystem. And importantly, these ecosystems, these sub-ecosystems, have multiple channels in them. So you have to put things together in a way that you can measure the parts of those channels that make up the ecosystem against the other ecosystems to see how your strategic goals are going relative to other ecosystems and against themselves over time, so you can see if that ecosystem is improving. An important outcome of this podcast should be all the entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers out there thinking, wow, I better really invest in my persistent revenue ecosystem, right? But also really great to understand how they interact, how these different ecosystems interact, where they touch, this is also going to be, it's the whole shebang. We're going to kind of just discuss how everything works. So a really cool episode. We've built up to this over time. I've had to talk individually about a lot of different concepts. So if you've been following the world's best email retention podcast, this episode is going to bring in so many great ideas that we've shared. And if you've not been listening, go back and start on episode 1, right? I mean, look, we go back and we start at the basics. What's an Apple Privacy Open, right? It's the whole thing. And so that kind of understanding will help you understand this very rich and diverse episode of the pod. So first, I want to just describe what you're seeing right here. If you are listening at home, we have some visuals here. It's not like episodes where I show emails and you kind of need to look at the emails. This is just some diagrams and some charts. I will describe them. So if you're just driving a car or whatever, totally fine. We talk about the funnel all the time in marketing, right? You got the top of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel. Actually, I represent it to people as a circle. So now you're going to just see my representation as a circle. Here, it's actually boxy. It looks kind of like the I Ching, if anybody knows what the I Ching is. And great fortune is in store for you if you get this stuff right. So in this kind of circle at the top, mass market advertising, that's anything from pushing videos on YouTube to skydiving from space with a logo on your chest. All of that stuff is mass market advertising. This is the do cool stuff portion of digital marketing. On the left in that circle, as you progress down, we see paid social. So conversion advertising, right? Finding people who are doom scrolling, interrupting it, showing them, some specific features and benefits because you know that they're ready for those, that kind of thing. Remarketing, right? On the right, organic. So kind of long tail keywords, social interactions, of course, branded search. They're just searching for your brand, right? This would be basically unpaid traffic, right? Unpaid, unmanaged traffic. I mean, if you are a search engine optimizer or you're doing search engine optimization, it is managed traffic. But for our purposes today, we're going to just discuss organic as, people have organically discovered you. That's what it is, right? And at the bottom of this circle, where both these come together, we got campaigns, flows, CRO, kind of just, variously post-click, right? What you do with people after they've discovered you over time. In our case, we talk about a 3-year relationship, right? Now, just a really broad idea. I want us to think about on the left track of this circle coming down, visits. Paid advertising is expensive. You want people hitting the site and buying. It's about traffic and high quality traffic and making sure that the traffic going down is the most qualified and they're going to spend right now. On the right, on this organic side, I want us to think about views. Now, I say visits and views, it's kind of old school. I mean, correct is like clicks and impressions. But technically, if someone visits and you're tracking it with Klaviyo and you get an active on site, it wasn't necessarily a click, right? So we'll think about visits on the left, where the paid is, and views on the right, where the organic is, because you need to show a lot of people your brand for it to spill over and for you to have growing organic traffic and growing kind of brand awareness. And what I want us to think about at a really high level is, this is my opinion, this is what I think e-commerce is all about. Moving people from the left to the right. Moving people from we're paying to make you visit and to get you to think about our brand to you're visiting and thinking about our brand for free because we've just carved a place in your mind, right? Now, when you move people over and you start getting free traffic is more profitable. And so the more free traffic you have, the lower your aggregate cost to acquire a customer is. And what that ends up with, that flows through your P&L, you get more profit, and you can take that profit and reinvest it in advertising. And this is the kind of cyclical process that's happening, right? And that's why I'm representing this as a circle, right? In one direction, you're sending eyes, right? In the other direction, you're sending back money, okay? So that's the whole thing. That's the ecosystem, okay? Of course, there are things not included in here. Like if you've got a storefront, this isn't including storefront. We're talking about pure play e-com. This also doesn't include Amazon. If you're doing Amazon, we're talking about just like, I've got a website, I'm marketing that website. I think there is a place to have a discussion about, hey, we're going to drive traffic to Amazon. Absolutely. There are certain cases where you do that. And then you've got 2 carts. You've got a Shopify or, whatever your cart is. You've got your own website cart. And then you've got an Amazon cart and you've got a persistent revenue system that's driving traffic to both different carts. But that would, that would make my little diagram really complicated. And I'm trying to keep it simple for y'all. So that's for a different day. Okay. For now, let's just assume this is your pure play e-com ecosystem. All right. Let's start talking about the subcomponents, the goals, and what these things do, okay? We're going to go to the first one, and this is the one that we've really been talking about over time on the World's Best Email Retention podcast. This is the persistent revenue ecosystem. And what I want you to think about is This is brand equity. Okay. This is the representation or expression of brand equity in your P&L. Okay. Now, again, if you're in Target, right? That's a different story. But we're just talking about, let's say you just do a website, right? So at the bottom, we have campaigns, flows, and CRO. And really, we'll say campaigns, lifecycle flows, abandonment flows, and CRO, or on-site optimization, right? Those things together, make up the bottom portion, let's say the post-click, what you do with someone after they've fully discovered you, okay? Also on the left, we've got remarketing, which is, hey, someone clicked on your site, they go into an ad funnel. And on the right, we got branded and direct, which means they definitely know about you, okay? Now, this is the part of your business that if you turn the lights off, like if you just stop advertising, this is the stuff that's still making money, right? The remarketing, what remains if you just turned off advertising is the weighted average of how much of remarketing is being run or is being triggered by campaigns or by branded, right? So, any traffic that was going into remarketing, any visits that were coming from advertising, those get turned off. So a portion of remarketing remains when you turn off advertising. And branded remains, although, realistically, it's the first thing to go. Like if you're not feeding it with new eyes from advertising, it will degrade. Although it does get some persistent eyes from campaigns. To kind of wrap that up, right at the center, right, with all this stuff kind of, let's say, revolving around it, are email campaigns. We talk a lot about automations. We sell a service called Flow Focus Management, right? We're a performance agency. But I think an unlock for everyone to understand is that campaigns are not for driving revenue, right? Automations are for driving revenue. Automations get triggered when someone comes in through advertising. Automations get triggered when someone comes in through branded, right? Through organic. Automations put people through a repeatable funnel, lots of messages right after someone showed intent, speaking to them, selling the products that they clicked on. So people use campaigns to drive revenue, and you're spinning your wheels. You create the campaign to drive revenue, crumple it up, throw it away. That work is done. Not only that, what you end up doing is just cannibalizing a bunch of revenue that you would have made from the flows. So you go, oh yeah, look at that campaign, 10,000 revenue or whatever. But a bunch of that would have been picked up by an abandonment flow, right? So it's not all net new. Think about this. Someone shows intent, right? And we know that for a solid 5 days, right? There's a very good chance they're going to interact with an email from you or with an ad, right? Okay, well, if you're sending, say, 3-4 emails over that time, and then you kind of instead of sending one of those, let's say you got one less, you're going to send 2 automated emails and a campaign. Well, rather than hitting them with 2 automated emails and a campaign, you can hit them with 3 automated emails and send less one campaign. And all the money comes from people who've shown intent. Intent is king. You do make money just randomly blasting. Some people, of course, will purchase, but more importantly, that blast it does drive the engagements to keep someone in your campaign window, right? More importantly, that blast will trigger more automated funnels, whether they're remarketing automated funnels or email automated funnels. But the revenue's coming from the automations, and you should let the automations do their job. Now, what is the campaign doing? It is generating a whole lot of unique opens. And those unique opens are brand impressions. I was looking at a brand that we represent last week, and if you take their paid top of funnel impressions and their email unique impressions, email unique opens, it's 1-to-1. Half of their brand impressions, we'll call those brand impressions, half the brand impressions are coming from email. This is important. Let's say if you're not thinking about multi-channel ecosystems that we're discussing, then you're not going to be putting those together. and realizing, oh, wow, half our brand impressions are coming from email campaigns. And so if you've got a model that tries to understand how many impressions it takes to, as we discussed in the earlier slide, to migrate someone from paid to free traffic, if your model doesn't take into account half of your brand impressions, your model's kind of screwed, right? And what are those? We discussed this. What are those email brand impressions? They are brand reinforcement. You are reinforcing brand awareness. Okay, so those campaigns, they put people back into remarketing, which is right here on our little diagram. They also will drive branded, right? If you're constantly over 3 years keeping people in your inbox, they're going to be in your on top of mind, and they're going to search for you. And so that's how this persistent revenue ecosystem works. You have the campaigns. The campaigns are broad. They're wide. They can be simple. Hey, we're launching something, right? Hey, here's a great way to think about how to integrate our product in your life. And those things trigger repeatable funnels. They reinforce what you've already built in your organic free traffic, right? And they drive people to the site where we've got, important kind of CRO functions, site optimization, installing things like rebuy or a product subscribe, landing pages, split testing, homepage, all the way down to product page, running multiple versions and trying to prove that optimizations are working, all that stuff. So let's say you turned off advertising. Everything I just described, the campaigns, which they sit right on top of your base. What's your base? Your base is where all your money comes from, right? I mean, what do we find? We find 60% of Klaviyo revenue is coming from buyers, right? That's your base. So that's what keeps running when you turn the lights off. When you turn advertising off, this is the ecosystem. So why would you want to have impressions, clicks, revenue, and cost for this? Because this is the expression of your brand equity. Is this thing going up or down? How is this ecosystem doing, right? This is what you've built. Everything else that we're going to describe is building this. Now, it's everything you've built. Like, I've been like a bottom of funnel guy for a long time. We're the guys that are under the car, covered in grease. Like I just described jumping from space and skydiving with a logo on your chest. That's the sexy stuff, right? Those of us who are under the car, keeping the wiring and tubing working, we're providing the revenue that will feed the other aspects, the other ecosystems that we discuss. I want to show you this. These are just some clients. It's hard to do this without talking my book in some way, right? But I just grabbed some random clients, but this knowledge will apply to any entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers out there who are trying to figure this out for yourselves and to make this work in your own digital ecosystem. So what do we see here? Klaviyo revenue is, I picked top 5 revenue sources out of Shopify. I've got one that's Klaviyo number 1 revenue source, one where it's number 3 revenue source, and 2 where it's number 4. These were just randomly selected. I just went and grabbed some, sizable clients, and just threw it up here. Klaviyo is a major revenue source. So if we're going to talk about like bottom line, are your other ecosystems going to function? Are they going to have the resources they need if you don't get your persistent revenue ecosystem working? No, they're going to starve. Okay, look at how much. Klaviyo, on a 7-day click, we find it's like, for us, an established kind of scaling e-commerce brand, the cost as a share of 7-day click platform revenue is 2 to 3%. Cheap. Now, pretty easy to run 20 to 30% in ad spend, right? Pretty easy. So pretty easy to run 20 to 30% of Shopify, right? In ad spend. So not just platform. So the revenue is coming out of Klaviyo is so cheap, right? When you do a apples to apples 7-day click to 7-day click comparison with your other channels, and 60% of that revenue is buyer revenue, so it's not chasing the same dollar. It's pulling people back. It is kind of net new, right? I mean, it's not net new because it's a repeat buyer, but it's in a way net new. It's not competing with your other channels. It's making your business greater than the sum of its parts. That's Klaviyo, which we're looking at right here. Okay. I mean, trick question, right? What share of your Shopify revenue goes through Shopify? 100%. So if we're talking about those tools, rebuy, on-site recommendations, hey, add this to your cart, increase your AOV, product subscribe, stay with us for a long time, increase the LTV, and kind of landing pages to specifically speak to someone based on where they came in before you drop them on the product page to make sure they get all the context they need to convert properly once they reach that page. Product-based flows, right? Back to email. Oh, they clicked on this. Let's get them in an automation. All of that Shopify revenue goes through Shopify. So how important is it to optimize your website? How important is CRO? Critical, right? We talked about CRO recently on the pod. I think we're going to talk about it more. Now we're talking about your persistent revenue ecosystem. So that email stuff, that SMS stuff, CRO is critical, right? So what is this thing, this persistent revenue ecosystem? This is your fortress. This is what you've built, okay? And the other things that we're going to discuss are about adding to this. So you got this fortress. This is what we've built. If you look at it and you're like, oh, this thing's kind of dinky and it's not doing much. Whoa, right? I mean, if you hear what I've said and you think that's not a very important part of my business, I have some amazing waterfront property in Saskatchewan to sell you, right? This is what you've built. It's the expression of what you built in your P&L. And it's what lasts if you turn your advertising off. And this, I assure you, we're going to go in and we're going to talk about the other ecosystems now, but this is the final thought. I want everyone to understand this. There is no way on God's green earth that your mass market advertising efforts will succeed if you do not have your persistent revenue ecosystem firing on all cylinders. There's no way. And the reason is, if the next guy does have it working, he's going to outcompete you. He's going to be able to grow faster, reinvest, offer better pricing, whatever it is. His margins are going to be better. His business is going to be better, right? This is not the stuff we see when somebody skydives from space with a logo on their chest. We don't see this. This is the stuff under the car, but this is the stuff that makes it work, right? I told you that, I was looking at a client where 50% of the impressions are Klaviyo and 50% ads, right? That's feeding into branded. It's very common to see 50% of owned traffic, owned being organic, and Klaviyo. It's very common to see 50% of owned traffic come from Klaviyo. And that feeds into remarketing. Email and SMS are a larger part of your digital ecosystem than many media buyers know. Really smart CEOs, over time, they've figured it out. They're like, oh, wait a second. And how have they figured it out? I mean, eventually this happens. It's happened to me. It's an unfortunate occurrence when it happens. But it's like the email system goes down. Oh, something happened with the sender, blah, blah, blah. Uncomfortable place to be if you're an email manager. Not because you don't have much to do. I mean, so you do. You're like, oh my God, I got to fix this. But I was like, even if it wasn't your fault, kind of your responsibility, right? And when this happens, boom, everything just gets dragged down to the floor. Because I just told you, what if you're losing half of your brand impressions? What's that do? All the stuff that was pushing people into the right side of that circle I showed you just slows down. Right? And what if half of your owned clicks, which is your email SMS clicks and your organic clicks, what if half those just go away? Okay, well, half of what was going into your remarketing, right, which is the kind of bottom of that paid socials funnel, half of that, boom, just grinds to a halt, which also makes your overall ROAS for paid media just also shoot up because suddenly you've got less at the bottom there, post-click, and more prospecting, and the prospecting's more expensive. The whole thing just grinds to the bottom, right? The whole thing just grinds to a halt. That's what you see when your outbound sender platform goes down, or you've got the wrong person managing it all of a sudden, or something like that. Someone's sick and someone else steps in. Oh, everything just suddenly really sucks, right? Because these systems have your base and your established audience. Okay, look, when we looked at the circle, you've got some audience up there doing they're discovering you. They're sharing on social. Look, that's important. I mean, any company without new customers is dying. You need new customers, right? I'm not here telling you that advertising is unimportant. Of course it is, right? And you've got so many people up there that are discovering you and maybe sharing a great video and, seeing your prospecting ads as they're scrolling through. It's huge up there. And there's a very few people down here. But the people down here at the bottom of that circle are your base, and that your base is so much more likely to spend than one of those people you're prospecting for. One of those people you're spending $100,000 a month on Facebook for, right? Or more. And your established audience, these are people who've given permission. They're like, yeah, I want to hear from you. I don't mind getting an SMS from you. Why'd they give you permission? Because they're interested. They're into you, right? The reason everything grinds to a halt when you have an impaired persistent revenue ecosystem is because that ecosystem is where all of the people who care about you are. They've either bought or they're thinking about buying, and they've told you. And when that grinds to a halt, the whole thing is just top heavy. Whoa. Okay? I think we've discussed this ecosystem enough. I think you get it. So let's continue. Let's talk about the other ecosystems and just get a chance to discuss how these things interact. Advertising revenue. Okay, what part of that circle that we showed you is this? It is we'll just say the paid social portion. I mean, it's not, paid social isn't the only place this happens, but where you are doing conversion ads. I want someone to buy right now, right? And so I'm doing targeting, whether it's algorithmic or maybe some demo stuff too. I don't know. There's less and less of that these days. And then the post-click remarketing. Hey, I got them to click. Let's continue and show them, let's get more into the benefits and less into the emotional connection. And then flows and CRO, right? Now, look, two of these were in the last ecosystem. This has got conversion advertising. We're looking to make money right now. And then it's got the remarketing and a portion of the campaign, flow, and CRO ecosystem. Like I told you, these ecosystems are multi-channel and there's overlap. So your measurement system is very important for understanding how these things are doing, because you want to measure this ecosystem against other ecosystems and against itself over time, right? So it's very important, if you're trying to get a good advertising revenue ecosystem, that you have good abandonment flows. I mean, some flows like flows to your stale engagement window, long reach back flows, not so much. Not important for this, right? That's more important for the next ecosystem I'll show you, and for your persistent revenue ecosystem that we just showed you. But certainly, getting them into an abandonment flow, which is offsite CRO, and getting them into, an optimized shopping cart, which is on-site CRO, getting them into that is critical for advertising revenue. So don't set up advertising without setting this stuff up. And by the way, if you're interested in setting this stuff up, feel free to come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form. I'll speak to you directly and give you a free audit. And remarketing is in this one, even though it was in the last one. Well, hey, isn't remarketing part of your persistent revenue funnel? Yeah, but it's also of course, it's part of your advertising revenue funnel. You're never going to find a buyer who says, yeah, remarketing is not really part of advertising. Of course it's part of advertising. It's where you introduce people who've shown intent to the deeper nuances of your product or service. So yes, this whole thing is an ecosystem. right? And you are, assumedly under conversion advertising, you're finding people who haven't been exposed to your brand, but are, probably problem aware, maybe, right? It's their first time experiencing your brand, and then you move them down to remarketing. In reality, we had somebody on the DTC pod that I was listening to. I'm sorry, I forget who the gentleman was, who was talking about, the research is that everybody who enters your kind of top of funnel, they've actually already been exposed to you on another device or in another session, and the cookie kind of expired or was erased, whatever a cookie is now. You know what I mean? But actually, where you think they're starting their journey is not where they're starting it. They've all already been exposed somewhere else. And of course, we're going to talk about mass market advertising in a second in a different ecosystem. And they very easily could have been exposed to that. Maybe they saw, their friend told them about the guy you had jump from space and skydive with a logo on his chest. So if they get into conversion advertising, it's not actually net new audience in a lot of cases. But it's net new audience that's ready to buy right now. Now, ads provide, let's say, conversion advertising, and even more so for the brand awareness ecosystem we'll talk about in a second. They provide expensive visits, expensive clicks. The further up on this circle you go, the more expensive the clicks. The flows and the CRO, provide inexpensive clicks. And we discussed in the persistent advertising system, campaigns actually feed into remarketing, which also provide inexpensive clicks. And you need to have that balance. If you're going to send expensive clicks down, you must send some cheap clicks up. And so when we talk about, hey, the brand next to you is going to succeed while you fail if you don't get this whole thing right. If you're not sending up those cheap clicks and you're only sending down the expensive clicks, what's going to happen? You're going to have a really expensive cost to click. And that expensive cost to click is going to increase the cost to click across your entire digital ecosystem. Because what really matters at the end of the day is, what's my headline cost per click? What's my headline cost to acquire? What's my headline margin? Am I making money? All these things kind of ramp up to that. But we do have different goals and strategies we're trying to achieve with these different things. But we can see here how important it is to have flows and CRO to make this whole thing work. Because even this is the advertising revenue ecosystem. Why is it the advertising revenue ecosystem? Because you can make money at this, right? This is I'm trying to grow my brand while making money. This should be profitable. If this isn't profitable, you got problems, because this is like conversion advertising, right? Okay, let's talk about the other. These are not the primary ecosystems that we're discussing. We're focused on email retention, and we'll be talking more about conversion rate optimization. It's the persistent revenue ecosystem. But what's the other ecosystem in here? The brand awareness ecosystem. It's another form of advertising. And so, importantly, obviously a huge part of e-commerce is advertising. You can do all kinds of affiliate stuff. I've been an affiliate manager. I'm not discussing affiliates here. Affiliates, if you had to stuff them somewhere in here, it would be, that where paid social is. Yeah, you'd stuff some affiliate in there. It's paid. The unfortunate thing about that is it's someone else's brand first. Well, we're talking about a mass market advertising, brand awareness, and how you build something, and where what you've built is represented. It's represented in the persistent revenue ecosystem. Okay? So what do we see in here? Out of the circle that we discussed, well, mass market advertising at the top, jumping out of space and skydiving with a logo on your chest, right? And then non-brand, kind of organic social, right? Branded, direct, someone just typing you right into the browser bar. And at the bottom, hey, here we are, back at email, SMS, and CRO. What do we got there? Campaigns, right? Okay, we touched on this. What are campaigns doing? They're providing brand impressions. Potentially half your brand impressions. Now, when you're really going wide with the mass market advertising, campaigns probably won't be doing 50%. Although over time, as people migrate from, remember, paid audience, move them over to free audience. Once they're free audience, free traffic at the same revenue per session is more profitable. You send profit back, you do more paid traffic, you migrate over to free traffic. That's the cycle. That's how you grow your brand through mass market advertising. And so what do you want? You want as many impressions as you can get, and campaigns are some of those. Over time, as people funnel down through owned traffic into your email system, then those free impressions, those unique opens are going to increase. Technical point, if you are not being strict on your campaign segmentation, like we've discussed so many times in the pod, I'm not going to explain it now. Go back to episode 1 if you don't know what we're talking about. You must be strict on those Apple privacy opens, or you're going to have a bad read on unique opens. You're going to have all these fake opens in there, right? Although that said, lots of brand impressions in advertising and ad channels are garbage, right? So, comparing garbage and garbage is not so bad. We just want really big idea of what's going on. So you go really hard up there. Yeah, you should be decreasing your ratio of impressions from brand to campaign. Someone who's small, being really efficient, just starting, but maybe you got a list, right? And you're just starting advertising. Yeah, you can see a 1-to-1, right? Of unique impressions to unique opens. So this is the most expensive ecosystem. Let's review. Our persistent revenue ecosystem, that's the money you make if you turn everything else off, right? That's what you've built. And you want that thing to be healthy because that's what you lean on. And the profit from that you take to build advertising revenue, the second ecosystem. And advertising revenue, it should be profitable. If you're going to make money from advertising, you'd like to be profitable. And once those two things are making money, then you're really sending money up. Then you can really, so what happens? The money goes up, right? And then the audience goes down. It's a circle, right? So if your advertising revenue ecosystem is not profitable, brand awareness will fail. You will not introduce anyone to your brand. You won't be able to afford it. You'll get stopped out unless you've got crazy financing. And you know what? Eventually, if you got a bad model, eventually it'll come up and bite you, right? The business cycle will change and cost per click will go up. And it's like, right? So if your advertising ecosystem is not profitable, your mass market advertising and brand awareness will fail. If your persistent revenue ecosystem is not dialed, you'll have difficulty profiting with your advertising revenue ecosystem because, one, you need the flows in the CRO, which is part of email, to work. That's actually part of that ecosystem. But what else feeds into that ecosystem? Bringing your base back. What should the advertising revenue? I mean, we didn't really go into too many KPIs here, but like an important KPI for the advertising revenue ecosystem is cost per new customer, cost per new first-time buyer, right? Okay, well, in the persistent revenue ecosystem, we want repeat buyers. We want to pull that. Remember that 60% of that revenue is from repeat buyers. We want to pull that back and drive it. But another important KPI there is base, right? Active base. What percent of your base is purchased in the last 12 months? What percent of that base has purchased more than once ever? So these are different KPIs for different ecosystems that overlap, right? So we want that good cost for a new customer coming in so that we can then work that customer in the persistent revenue ecosystem, right? Same with new address cost. If you just get a subscriber, if you're just doing list growth and kind of audience growing stuff, if it's a good cost, we're working that subscriber. How do you know if it's a good cost? compare it to your revenue per subscriber, right? How much are we making from a subscriber over time? What are we paying to bring that subscriber in? Get that stuff dialed. And then you can do this. And this brand awareness ecosystem, as you can see, it's got advertisers, creatives coming up with great campaigns, right? $250,000 photo shoots and videos of people dancing in suits in Patagonia, right? And then at the bottom, it's got us bottom of funnel people who are covered in grease under the car, right? Just tooling it, right? To make sure that we squeeze as much money out of all the stuff that comes down, and then take all those people who've come down and reinforce the awareness. And here's the campaigns going up. Reinforce the awareness, right? When this is successful, you will know your brand awareness efforts are successful when, even though you're spending on mass market advertising, your headline cost to acquire a new customer is going down. Of course, there's a step up. You start spending on this. Whoa, we're spending all this money. And then your cost to acquire a customer is going to go up. But then it just starts drifting down. Hey, it's getting cheaper to acquire a customer. And at the same time, hey, look, we're getting more branded searches. Doesn't take a genius, right? People are aware of your business. Oh, look, people are sharing our videos on social. Doesn't take a genius. Of course, you want to have MTA software. Of course, you want to have really smart stuff doing regression analyses. There have been some amazing MTA and media optimization products discussed on the DTC podcast. I recommend, if you guys aren't listening to the DTC podcast, obviously you should. Great to get that stuff set up. Critical for you to manage your spending properly. But also, in the good old days, we're just like, hey, branded search is up, right? More long tail keyword searches. What's that mean? Weird long tail searches don't just appear in someone's head. They've been exposed to your brand, or they've been exposed to a competitor, and you and that competitor together are working through advertising to grow the total addressable market for your category. So when that stuff's working, it's like, oh yeah, we're seeing some long tail keyword searches go up. That's an indication that the category is improving. The branded is an indication that you. But how important the campaigns are for this, to bring this back to what we're talking about, right? Email retention, site optimization, and how important for those campaigns to do the life cycle automations, because campaigns are impaired. We've discussed so many times what's happening with Gmail, Yahoo, tightening up the inbox, harder to reach people. Pretty much all my audits, people's windows are too big and a bunch of the messages are going to spam. Like every audit. It's just, if you haven't got a super tight campaign window, you're just, dragging down your sending reputation over time. Certainly people show up, we run a Glock apps, and they're 50% in spam. It happens, right? So how important it is to build the right stale intent flows to reset people in the campaign window and beef up your campaign window, because that campaign window is providing all of those brand impressions for your brand awareness ecosystem, right? And like we described, some people get it and they're like, whoa, a huge portion of our brand impressions are email, and we're building a 3-year relationship with someone. And then, they're making that additional purchase 9 months down the line or whatever it is. Some people get it. Every 5 years, I'm old now, right? I'm old. Every business cycle, every interest rate cycle, a new set of 25-year-old e-commerce professionals just getting started out have to realize, oh wow, I have to worry about low cost revenue. Oh wow, I have to, find a way to get customers on the site for free, and to learn the importance of free traffic. And we're there. Interest rates have gone up, and suddenly there's, we're getting more leads for people who are interested in low cost revenue, right? And additionally, finally, how important it is, we discussed some technical CRO stuff here, how important it is to get, proper recommendations and, hey, why don't you add this? If you like this, maybe you'll like this. basically just stuff that we were doing on Amazon for a long time. But also brand awareness, having 2 different versions of your homepage at all times. Like never launching a homepage without understanding if that's the right homepage, because the homepage gets tons of visits. I mean, your homepage and your main shop page. You know what I mean? That's where all of those brand impressions are. So, geez, look at that. My diagram is wrong. We should have campaigns and kind of homepage on there and using CRO to test that homepage. What are the kinds of things you'd want to do? Look, you just launched your people in suits dancing in Patagonia. Okay, you're going to put the video, obviously. You're going to do this big launch. Hey, here's our Patagonia suits, right? Okay, you're going to put the video on the homepage, a clip from a $250,000 video shoot you did. Put that on the homepage. And then you're another version with a still or with another clip from that, right? Because that is what is going to improve or worsen the probability of someone continuing through on your site. And it's so many brand impressions. So many people hit your homepage. That's a brand impression. That fits into this brand awareness ecosystem, right? I mean, on the other side where we had CRO, that's the product detail page. Okay, we're going to split test the product detail page. Remember, this side, the brand awareness is about visits. It's about views. Sorry, it's about how many people you can expose to your brand concepts, your brand promise, and over time, get them to type you into the browser bar automatically. On the left side, it's about visits. Okay, getting someone to click and purchase right now because we're paying so much to hold on to their attention. Yeah? And moving people from the left to the right, moving people from paid to free, getting the P&L benefit from free traffic and reinvesting in paid. And so, on this, certainly at the bottom fits CRO for your pages that have the most page views, because this is about views, right? So going to where there's the most page views and optimizing that, right? Okay, let's close that up. Let's close it all up. This is foundational talk. I hope this gets some people excited about ecom. I mean, how could you not be excited about ecom when you think about all these pieces working together, and it just gets me going. So your persistent revenue funnel, that's all the stuff we've been talking about brought into one. That's your brand equity. That's what you've built. That's your base. That's your intent-bearing audience, right? And that's what you lean on for revenue to, one, grow first-time buyers at a good cost, have the money to grow first-time buyers through your advertising revenue ecosystem, and to send money up to grow eyes and grow brand awareness with your brand awareness ecosystem. Okay, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers, have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the world's best email and retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.